Welcome to LegitCast, where we explore legal issues pertinent to small and medium-scale businesses. Last week we talked about why you need to hire a legal advisor, and this week we're continuing on the same topic with Donald. So grab a cup of coffee and let's get into the video. So carrying on from our discussion from last week, we were discussing why you need a legal advisor, and we're going to carry on, we're going to talk more about it. Yeah, let's get into it. The question that I have for you today, Donald, is what are the ways legal advisors can help minimize liability risks associated with a business owner?
Legal advisors can basically point out the legal risks of a business. So you can do a legal diagnosis, identify what are the risks, what are the challenges a business might face in its dealings, and advise on that basis, provide a set of pointers that the business can use to mitigate, minimize, eliminate its risks. Business risks are beyond legal. Some are political, some are economic. So most offices have a risk manager, or most big companies, they have a head of risk or risk manager, someone who's just looking at what risks can this business face. Is it competition? Is it regulation? Maybe you're a crypto company, and then crypto is banned in the country you're operating in, you see. Or you're the CEO of TikTok, and the US says you can't operate TikTok as a Chinese company in the US. You have to sell it to a US company.
Something that's going on right now.
Yes.
TikTok is fighting for their lives, and legal advisors have an opportunity to make some good money.
Yes, yes.
But also to help them achieve their goals.
Yes, yes. So there's a lot of risk. Bankruptcy, the risk. If you studied the FTX closure, there was a lot of financial impropriety, fraud, bad accounting. So that was all risk. You had this big company and they were siphoning money from one company to another, and so there were a lot of
but how did they go undercover and people didn't notice straight away?
Well, it's a big company, raised a lot of money, and the founders were people that the industry respected. So happens a lot.
Something I was looking at is, would you say the lawyers can be given credit for how well they took the situation, because they were not noticed for a long time. They were like under the radar for a while, and yet they were conducting all these legal activities.
The thing is, if you're a private company, you have no obligation to disclose your financial management, your books. So you can basically get away with a lot of things. Maybe your investors, your shareholders will complain, but the public will not know. It only happens when a company becomes public or tries to become public. Then all these things are exposed. Or for the case of crypto, usually crypto has booms and busts. So when the company fails to pay back, or you've put your money in the app and you're trying to withdraw it and it's not happening and things like that, then can be exposed. So when there's like a downturn, an unexpected situation, for most companies it's when they file to go public, like we work, then everyone realizes these guys have been spending a lot of money and spending it badly and things like that.
When would it be advisable for a company to go public?
Essentially, the reason for going public or listing on a public stock exchange is to raise additional capital from
the public.
From the public. So these are individuals, stockbrokers, basically to increase the number of people who own a piece of your company, and thereby raise more capital. So Most companies that do that, it's because you're trying to raise more capital, either to finance your operations or to pay back your initial investors, or to exit. So you can list it on the stock exchange, other people buy the shares, then you sell yours and go away. Yeah.
So that's what they call getting rich quick.
Yes, it's a very quick way to get rich, especially if you have a valuable company and a lot of people want a piece of it. So the values of most stocks tend to be very high when you list on a stock exchange. If you've raised, say, $1 billion as a private company, if you list on a stock exchange, you can raise maybe 10 billion,
Nice.
in like the first week or something. You can really raise a lot of money. Yeah.
Our audience, people, you shouldn't suffer with your business alone. Go public, but make sure you have decent papers.
Yes, it also depends on where you are listing. So if you list on the New York Stock Exchange, it's the most liquid, most subscribed. It has the most money. If you list on the Uganda Stock Exchange, you will get some money. Not as much as you would.
People don't know about stocks around.
Yes, so we do have companies that have listed and they make money in Uganda. MTN listed a couple of years ago, and they have
it's another case.
institutional investors like NSSF. NSSF got, I think, 50 billion or whatever in profit from investing in MTN. So you can make some good returns.
Nice. All right, moving on. How can a legal advisor assist in resolving disputes with customers, suppliers, or employees, potentially avoiding costly litigation?
So number one, as a legal advisor, when I look at a company to avoid what you call disagreements or disputes with stakeholders, partners, employees, is to have policies in place to manage the conduct of the company. So do you have a code of conduct for your employees? Do you have a privacy policy for your customers? Do you have terms and conditions for the company upon which the company is operated? So these things really help you to so that the clients deal with you on the basis. When you download any app, it says accept. So you just tick it, but you don't know.
You don't read
the fine print. Yeah. So if anything happens, the company is going to go back to that fine print, saying you signed up to do this and that, and you allowed us to use this information or to do these and these things and those things. So it's a way for a company to protect themselves. And it's the same when you go to a supermarket, you get a receipt. It has terms and conditions at the back. Goods sold, once sold, are not returnable, things like that. If you shop online, there's a return policy. If you buy on Jumia, they have a 7-day return policy. So after 7 days, you can't return the product, even if you discover there's a deficit. Then there's things like warranty, guarantee. If it's a 1-year warranty and you come back after 2 years, it doesn't apply anymore. Yeah. So you need to have those sorts of terms, conditions to protect yourself. And you also need policies with your employees, with your partners. You need agreements. Those agreements need to be very specific. Do you have confidentiality clauses? Do you have intellectual property clauses? Do you have dispute resolution clauses? If there's a dispute, how do you address it? Do you go to mediation or arbitration, or do you go straight to court? Court tends to take a while. And what is the venue of arbitration if it's an international contract? I'm a Ugandan company, I'm signing an agreement with a British company. If we have a dispute, is it the laws of England that apply or the laws of Uganda? And do we resolve this before the High Court in the UK or in Uganda? And are we doing arbitration where? So you can choose a neutral seat and say arbitration will happen in Dubai, or something, or South Africa, and the laws of this country will apply. There's something called conflict of laws under international law, where you need to choose what is the appropriate forum to resolve a legal dispute, because different forums come with different regulations. The laws in the US are not the same as the laws in Uganda and things like that, which is why companies choose to incorporate in places like Delaware, because the Delaware has very simplified corporate laws and a very robust corporate legal disputes mechanism. Their courts are very efficient, and they tend to give standard decisions, judgments that favor companies, and also their company tax policies are very low. So it's a very attractive place to, if you have any problems, it's easy, as opposed to if you're in another country or jurisdiction.
Yeah, it's amazing how lawyers have to know all of this in order to help a business resolve some of these issues. It seems like working with employees, working with customers comes with a lot of problems that need to be foreseen, because if you don't foresee them, they will bite you.
Yes, that's why companies usually hire legal officers. You have a chief legal officer or in-house counsel, and sometimes it's more than one. You have a whole legal department. For any serious companies, you have a legal department with company secretary, legal advisors, and so on. And beyond that, they also have external legal counsel. You have law firms and retainer who represent you, who advise you. So there's things that you will never know as a business person, but that you need to know. Yeah.
So much as you come with a big idea, with a vision, you need the lawyers to see the details.
Yes. Yes.
I think I've said this on a number of times on the podcast.
And the devil is in the details.
Yeah, it's in the details. So, moving on, what ways can a legal advisor provide guidance on tax planning and compliance to a business owner? Yeah, taxes is a tricky one.
Yeah, so tax planning is a whole other animal. And even among lawyers, you have tax consultants who get additional qualifications in tax management, tax advisory. So I'd advise companies to specifically look out for qualified tax lawyers, because tax is a creature of law. Taxes are established by the law. You have an Income Tax Act, a Value Added Tax Act, and all sorts of things. And these are passed by the Parliament. The Income Tax Act, for example, is updated every year. Every time you have a financial year, you have a new Income Tax Act, and it has different provisions. So even for lawyers, it's a specialization that some lawyers go and say, I want to focus on tax advisory, tax disputes. So you need to find someone whose expertise or specialization is in tax law, and not just an accountant, because accountants also don't understand everything about tax. They will know some basics. The accountants will do your books of accounts, so income statement, balance sheet, and all of these. But when you get to the taxation level, the accountant will give you what's called profit before income tax based on the books, and then you take it to your tax consultant, who will then say, this expense was included but should be excluded. This is allowable, this is a disallowable, this is a deductible, this is exempt. So in order to optimize your tax liability, it helps to speak to a tax consultant who will be able to advise you based on the law. There are items, expenses that are not taxed, and there are others which are taxed. And then sometimes the tax regime changes and the amounts change. Withholding tax, value added tax, and all sorts of different excise duties, import duties, Yeah.
Lawyers might be expensive, but they will help you work around paying little tax or paying no tax at all.
Yes, so you can, essentially do what's called tax planning to minimize your tax liability, to pay as little tax as possible, because tax is paid out of profit, and you can minimize your profit by reinvesting the money that would have been profits, by registering in a jurisdiction that charges less tax or no tax, by creating legal vehicles that are tax exempt, like trusts, foundations. Then the foundation
NGOs.
owns the company, things like that. So OpenAI has a whole convoluted structure where there's a foundation, then there's a profit company. So as a charitable organization, usually their incomes are not taxed. So you can have a foundation owning shares in a company, so they don't have a lot of tax liability, or a trust or things like that. Yes, so always helpful to speak to a tax advisor too.
How can a legal advisor help ensure that the company's governance structure, such as bylaws and shareholder agreements, aligns with its long-term goals and protects the interests of stakeholders?
First is to understand what are the interests of stakeholders. Maybe you want to maintain a majority stake in your company. You don't want to be diluted by subsequent investors later on, which sometimes happens. The more you raise money, the more you give out part of your company. And whoever has a part of your company also has voting rights, also has power. So usually whoever has a majority stake of the company can make key decisions. They can fire the CEO. They can basically appoint a board. They can determine the direction that the company is taking. They can kick you out of your own company. So based on the desires of the proprietors of the company, then you can advise them. So things like shareholders agreements or founders agreements are usually key, and we usually advise that founders sign them before they even start. So how are you allocating the shares in the company? Do you have a vesting schedule, which means does each of you get your shares immediately when the company is registered, or do you set a period upon which the shares can be unlocked based on how long the person stays with the company, but also how productive they are? Because sometimes you give someone shares and then they want to leave after 1 month and they own 50% of the company. So how do you deal with that? So a founder's agreement helps you. You have a vesting schedule, you have a cliff which stipulates when the shares start vesting, which means now you own a piece of this company. You can also have different classes of shares. There's what's called preferential shares, ordinary shares, shares that you can buy at a premium or at a discount, Class A shares, Class B, and all these things. So you can have super voting rights, and then the other people can have less voting rights, which means they can't outvote you or things like that. You can say, I want to maintain a majority in the company, regardless of how many new people come on board as investors or shareholders, so that your decisions are still the most important, that they will not make decisions that are contrary to yours.
Something that I'm curious about is, if you have a very good idea, but you don't have the funding and you still want to maintain a big hold of your company, how can a legal advisor help you with that? Because you're going to get investors coming, but if people are bringing in more money than what you've put in, but you still want to have a hold of your company, how can you go about that?
Exactly what I was describing, that you can craft your memorandum in a way that it protects you that you still have key voting rights, and you're still the key decision maker, regardless of how many people come. And you can also be able to, when you value the company, to value your contribution in a way that you still have some sort of majority of the shares. So there's ways to do about that. Not just legal, but some of them, in the financial, so, accounting. But yes, you can sign agreements. For example, when you sign term sheets or investment agreements, you can include a clause that says, this investor will have a certain stake, or there are certain things they will not do. Even if they have more shares than you, they can't fire you, or they can't make changes and things like that.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know right there. In the event of unforeseen legal issues or challenges, how can a legal advisor provide advice safeguarding a company's interests and reputation?
So this goes back to risk, being able to foresee risk and prepare for it, have the necessary legal protections. So yeah, a legal advisor can help you look at that. Are you going into a new market? What are the legal issues that could happen? Make sure you have foolproof legal documentation in all aspects of your business, and that everything you do is, your lawyer is able to advise you on all your major actions, that they are in conformity with the law. Maybe your business needs insurance. A lawyer can advise you what policies to take out, worker compensation and things like that. Yes, so, based on the risk profile, you can get to know what interventions you need to do. When the situation does happen, of course, for example, you bankrupt, your lawyer can help you navigate, because it's lawyers that are usually appointed as administrators, liquidators, to help you pay off your debts, and things like that.
But now, if you don't have the money to pay a lawyer, but you still want their services, how are you going to go about that?
Well, you can always negotiate. There's a scale of legal fees that lawyers base on. If you can't afford, you can have a conversation and defer payment.
When you say defer payment,
to pay it later.
Oh, nice.
So you say, I don't have money now, but I expect my business to grow, and, so you can sign agreements to do that.
And give them part of some shares in your company.
Yeah, you can also give them stock. Yeah. So there's ways to go around that.
Wouldn't that be the best decision ever, to get a lawyer to have shares in your company? That way, you are sure that they are very aware of everything that's going on in the company.
Yeah, it's one way to look at it.
It's one way to look at it, but make sure you don't have the biggest shares.
Or that whatever shares they have, they can use them against you. Shareholders can always gang up against another shareholder. So if you have 10 shareholders and 5 shareholders have a majority,
the corporate world isn't really corporate. There is some
there's always, yeah. But also, the way attorney-client privilege works is that, your dealings with your lawyer are sort of, if the lawyer is now part of the company, then there's conflict of interest. If the same lawyer who is a shareholder is also the one representing the company. So in corporate governance, it helps to divide some of those
responsibility.
Yeah.
Alright, that was the discussion with Donald. I hope you picked a thing or two, and I hope you saw the relevance of hiring a lawyer or a legal advisor, someone who can help you with your documents. Thank you very much, and catch you in the next video.